Every so often, whenever I'm checking the Cover Killer Nation social media accounts, the Twitter, the Facebook group, and everything like that, something just comes up that has a poignant opinion or really makes a lot of sense. And such a thing happened, even though this is one that actually didn't manifest itself, recently. Instead, this was from a tweet from Brian Shields from August of last year. He said that heavy metal is in a fucking golden age. It's right now. The golden age of heavy metal is right fucking now. He tweeted that 6 months before his unfortunate passing, which was in February of 2015. And it made me sort of think a little bit. And it's made a lot of people think, and I'm sure that you've seen that there have been folks that have said that 2015 has been a bad year for music, which in a video a week or so ago we said we're fucking idiots. Well, this has got me thinking a little bit. It really does. Are we in a golden age of heavy metal right now? Are we truly in it? I mean, whenever you consider the origins of metal, the 70s really can't be a golden age, considering it just sort of was getting started, it was getting legs. There weren't many bands, and most of them were more in the classic rock vein, but the 80s. Now, what about the 1980s? I mean, you have to look at the 1980s whenever you talk about heydays, golden ages of heavy metal. I mean, geez. We have the advent of thrash metal. We have King Diamond, with Merciful Fate, and then eventually going solo. We have the rise of extreme metal, death metal starting to get its grips. We have great solo albums coming from Ozzy Osbourne and Ronnie James Dio, two great Black Sabbath albums with Ronnie James Dio. We have glam and hair metal ruling the airwaves. This is something that's out there. It's to the point where this is what record companies want to see. I mean, this is doing better than some pop music. It's hand in hand with new wave. What the fuck? How can we talk about any other age without considering the 1980s? I stopped and thought a little bit. 2015, we don't have that 30-year period of hype. We don't have that 30-year period of hype where we can truly say that the albums and the bands of today are going to have that same lasting impact. Just because it doesn't seem to have the same social impact, just because it doesn't seem to be as popular, does not mean that we are not in a golden age. It just means a lot more people need to be exposed. And a lot more people need to have their gateway drug moment with heavy metal. Because in the 1980s, it was everywhere. The gateway drug moment was easy to have. Here in the 20-teens, it's a little bit more difficult, and we've got to help them out. There's a lot more that could be said about that as well. I mean, if you take a look at quantity over quality, 2015 definitely has a lot to offer. But then I go back to the 1980s and realize that so much was being influenced, so much that we have today in 2015 started right back then, 1980s. With all those things that we have just mentioned, the advent of thrash metal, with extreme metal, we don't yet have black metal, but the seeds are really being sown. That's not until the latter portion of the decade. And death metal is kind of in that same boat, but death metal is starting to pick up. There are some death metal albums that are starting to come out, and they're pretty important. And that's going to influence a long period of time. Great albums that came out in the 1980s as well. It's hard to argue with the history. It's hard to argue with albums such as Master and Puppets or Rain and Blood, or for me, Show No Mercy. It's hard to really question albums such as Melissa. It's hard to question albums from bands such as Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. It's hard to really go against everything that happened in the 1980s and all of those albums that are considered to be cornerstones of heavy metal, what heavy metal is all about, what it represents. These albums that are still considered to be among the best albums of all time. And then I fast forward. I fast forward to the 20-teens, and the very first thing I think about is this album right here. Phantom Antichrist by Creator. Yeah, Creator is a band that started in the 1980s, but they put out their best album, A Perfect 10. One that they have been yet to follow up because it's so damn good. Probably for other reasons, but you get what I'm saying. And I think about this right here. I think about Surgical Steel by Carcass, a band that was gone for 17 years. 17 years! Maybe even more. Decided to come back. And not only did they come back with an acceptable album, they came back with an album of the year. That's how damn good it was. And it wasn't just because it was nice to hear the guys again. It's because the material is that damn solid. And I can see a lot of people out there saying, well, this band started in the 1980s, that really doesn't do much for your argument. Obliviscaris, Citadel. Relatively recent band. Album of the year last year. Just an amazing record. An amazing record. They are now stepping into heavy metal's pantheon. They're becoming a well-known product. Well, at least a better-known product. This is a group that definitely deserves more attention. And it's literally out there in such... It's to the point where we're doing a top 50 list this year. We're doing a top 50 list. We originally started with a top 25 back whenever this channel started. It just keeps on growing. It just keeps fucking growing. It's to the point where I have a Patreon one have to have, you know, to try to fund some projects that I want to do for this, you know, for this channel and for the streaming and everything like that. But also, I think to fund a fucking safe house from all the goddamn comments. And there's another thing. You might think that's just annoying or a nuisance and these people are being ridiculous. But it shows that people care about this stuff. It shows that people give a shit. It shows that it is something that's on the tongues, or at least on the fingers, of heavy metal fans. Now, I know what a lot of you are going to think whenever I say that I agree with Brian Shields. And I agree with that sentiment. You're going to say, well, it can't be a heyday for heavy metal. It can't be a golden age considering... I'll take a look at all the bands that are right now being considered really popular by the media and by metalheads. Bring Me the Horizon is the metal. Neither's Trivium, not anymore at least, not ever since Shogun. Then they just care about bands like Suicide Silence and Asking Alexandria and Whitechapel and Sleeping with Sirens and Pierce the Veil and they just want to be a part of it. This can't be heavy metal's golden age. It just can't be because this is what they care about. Bands like Godsmack and Five Finger Douche Punch and Disturbed. This can't be. It just doesn't make any sense. You're looking at one slice of the pie. You're looking at one little slice of the pie, which is literally a sampler pie. A sampler pie. You're looking at modern metal, you're looking at sales figures, and you're determining that to be the reason why this is not a golden age. You're looking at the fact that things sound the same. Maybe you sound the same. Maybe you're just boring. This pie literally has a new flavor with every slice, and you choose to only look at the one that the most people want to eat. Almost as though these other slices are terrible. They're going to taste like poo. Heavy metal has had a hell of a year in 2015. It's just amazing that some people are unable to see that. We are in a heavy metal golden age, and we are built to last. It is built to last. This is just getting started. Think of all the bands that 20 years ago were relative unknowns, and think about who they are now. Think about this band right here. Think about Oliver. Think about how Oliver was whenever they first got started, and what they are now. How they've morphed, how they've changed, their shifts in sound. They have become creative powerhouses, energy aplenty. Very different, very creative, very unique. Now think of all the bands today that are just getting started and how they may stylistically shift. Think of the Olivers or the Catatonias, the Anathemas, the Paradise Losts. Think of how the careers of these groups are going to shift. You give so much shit to a band like Opeth for changing up their sound from death metal to prog, then absolutely forget the fact that Catatonia, Anathema, and others have done the exact same damn thing. It just happened in the 90s. And with different styles of music. It just happened in the 90s whenever you weren't alive. Or whenever you weren't paying as good enough attention. Think of which bands we're going to be talking about in 20 years for a Heavy Metal Hall of Fame induction. Bands that may have just gotten started a few years ago, or bands that may have just started to really hit their stride. We are in heavy metal's golden age. A heavy metal golden age. Brian Shields is absolutely right, and I totally agree with him. Do you? Listen to something new today. Something you've never heard before. Tell me I'm wrong. Don't go with just some band on the top of the surface either. Go for something deep in the underground. Something that has a lot fewer views on YouTube, since I know that's probably where you're going to be doing it. Give it a try. Chances are, if it's something from this year or these past couple of years, you may end up really liking it. Actually, chances are, if it's heavy metal in general, and you're already a metal fan, you just need to dig deeper, find more, satisfy that craving. We are in a golden age. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.